So, just to start off this video, unless you know a person really well and know they're on the same page as you, and you both have asked each other to help keep each other aware of your privilege, please stop using the phrase check your privilege. It sounds pretentious, haughty, and demeaning, and a way of shutting you up because you have privilege, and therefore can't have anything objective to say, which shuts down any possible conversation and inflames their prejudices even more. Privilege is a term that is very real and very serious and should not be abused. It's like playing with dynamite that can be extremely powerful and useful, but can also be very dangerous if used improperly. I live in Indianapolis. Until the 1960s, we had one of the best transportation systems in the nation. Then Detroit bought up our trolley systems and stripped them out. Our public transit use dropped with a mix of steep rise in personal vehicle use and inconvenient bus service that didn't go where you needed them to go and didn't run on time very well. It became associated with poor people, dropping its use even more. The Department of Transportation began regulating road building quite similar to the Soviet planned economy. When enough drivers hit a magic number, more lanes or roads were built. Regulation required street parking, which encouraged even more drivers. It's why when my city claims that people choosing cars over public transportation is free market, you have to laugh. Neighborhoods built from the 70s to the 90s were built without sidewalks because why bother if everyone's just going to drive? Since the 1900s, the average amount a child is allowed to leave their house on their own in the US has shrunk from 5 miles to across the street, mostly due to fear of traffic. Our system is set up to favor cars over any form of transportation. If you can't afford a car, you are going to be heavily inconvenienced with uncertain bus arrivals and lots of transfers. Here in Indianapolis, for many years, if you bike places, you fall into two stereotypes: a poor person or the douche on the bike. Drivers hate pedestrians, pedestrians hate drivers, and both hate cyclists, mostly because police are not encouraged by law to prosecute cyclists who act like assholes and break the law, creating almost a Wild West feel, and cyclists tend to have a hatred of drivers because if a driver turns into you while you're legally following traffic laws and crack your ribs, they will just be fined for failure to yield as opposed to being treated as hitting a pedestrian. This is exactly how privilege works. Each ethnicity or commuter has different experiences that the other cannot understand unless they are lucky enough to switch between them. Drivers are completely oblivious to the issues of non-drivers, for the most part, unless they pay attention to the data. Traffic would also run smoother in the long run if more drivers left the road in favor of public transit or cycling, but drivers just get irritated in the short term that one of their lanes was removed to make a protected bike lane. As a driving-only commuter, there were many issues and nuances about biking I was oblivious to. I would not look for cyclists when turning. I would creep forward over the intersection crosswalk without thinking about it, trying to get a better view so I could turn easier. As a cyclist now, I have to constantly watch for cars and never assume they will stop. When driving now, I will make sure never to cross over a crosswalk line, as it is extremely rude to pedestrians and cyclists. Being a driver and a cyclist has awakened a lot of new ways of looking at the world and structure just in laws. I'm a straight white male. I'm hardly rich, but I'm not poor. I drive a used Japanese car that I own, but is for the most part reliable, though hardly fancy. According to people in other first world nations, as a scientist, I am ridiculously underpaid, but until we can raise wages for all, my salary will continue to be meh. I have been through the grind of job hunt and unemployment. I came from a family of 6 kids of lower middle income, which ensured we barely had anything. I had to work through depression in high school and college. I had to join the Navy to pay for college. I was thrown into an awful job economy after graduation. I had 5 years of jumping from unstable crappy job to crappy job in science world because it mostly runs on contract labor. On top of that, I have Asperger's, which made things even harder. I worked very hard to get where I am today. I am proud of all I have accomplished. However, I know that I didn't get here just from my own hard work. I'm white. No one suspects I'm going to steal things. I don't get stopped by the police and harassed, and therefore disproportionately incarcerated for drug use. My demographic is very well represented in the media. I've been told all my life that great things were expected of me. unlike members of other minorities, where they have been told either directly or implicitly that they just need to try and get by in life and not aim very high. Not much is expected from them. My ancestors weren't slaves, didn't live under Jim Crow, and didn't have to deal with paying extreme loans because they weren't the right color, which is what created ghettos in the first place. I don't get the cops called on me for trying to get into my own house or assume I'm a prostitute for making out with my significant other just because of my skin color. In the mind of the average person, other than maybe how I dress or my long hair or social awkwardness, most people's brains have been wired by society to associate positive things with my white appearance, as opposed to someone of another ethnicity, where they subconsciously associate negative things with them. I'm male. In conversation, everyone listens to me with their full attention. No one dismisses what I have to say because I don't have the right combination of chromosomes, or just stares at my chest pretending to listen and care. No one grabs my ass in a large crowd, or thinks that no or being drunk means yes sexually, or think that talking about what they want to do to me sexually in a professional or non-professional setting is appropriate. I can take risks with people or places statistically I probably shouldn't, while women have to be aware at all times, and if they aren't, they get slut-shamed because they obviously wanted it for drinking, wearing any clothes deemed not drab, or taking a back way. My actions get defended because I'm obviously a guy and therefore couldn't control myself if an attractive female is around, because apparently I have the natural self-control of a dog who will hump a stranger's leg if it's nearby. I have the advantage that I'm healthy, that my mom fed me extremely healthy food growing up, that I'm tall, as people tend to subconsciously give preference to tall people over short people. I hardly ever get sick and have never had someone in my family get a terminal disease, nor do I live with a condition that wipes out days of my life and will to live, like severe migraines. I also don't have physical or mental disability now. The only thing I could even begin to claim discrimination for is Asperger's or depression during high school, but both of these impact people's impression of me long after the first impression. Even both my names are high in the alphabet, assuring people in charge see my name first, which have been linked to higher memory of me and closer attention. Am I ashamed of any of this? Hell no. I still struggle to get where I am. I still came from a difficult background. I still struggled and pushed through the military and college, many times barely hanging on by a thread financially. I am proud of who I am and what I have accomplished. However, I don't assume others don't have even harder lives than I have had, or worked any less. That other people don't have different situations. That they haven't been given worse education styles than mine. As being homeschooled, I had a lot of one-on-one, and was taught amazing self-study skills, and had the love of learning instilled into me. I don't dare judge people who don't have what I have now, or who are in terrible situations. Not everyone's mind is good with numbers, and they suffer with finances. Not everyone has good cost-benefit analysis or impulse control, as shown that Norway and Sweden are the highest educated and are the only countries where women cheat more than men. Not that women in those nations cheat more than women in other countries, but that men cheat less when they have higher education and learn cost-benefit analysis. Prison populations are full of people with extremely low social skills, impulse control, and cost-benefit analysis skills, which most people learn from their parents, and some prisons are gaining a lot of traction in reducing recidivism rates by teaching these skills. Success in these other skills are learned traits, and if your parents never had these skills, your chances of learning them are significantly diminished. And if you learn these skills by some sheer fluke, you are the statistical outlier. I am proud of who I am and what I've accomplished. I am also aware that the system I live in is very broken and has given me some advantages over others. Though if the system wasn't broken, I very much doubt I would need the advantages to do well in life, though people of other races and sexes might do even better than me. Jumping from privilege to non-privilege is very hard to do, so you can actually walk a mile in someone's shoes, unlike switching from cars to cycling. A change in one's physical body is often the only way. All my life I was skinny as a rail, and looked down on overweight people as just lazy and having no self-control. Then I joined the Navy, which sounds counterintuitive, but I was eating a lot of whole grains and had relatively low stress prior to the Navy. High stress increases appetite, white bread is cheap, so that's what they provided me, and in the nuclear field you sit around a lot and study. As I had never had to work out and stay thin, I had never learned to discipline myself to work out, so I went from 170 to 220 in a year. Once you've had that level of weight on, any time you try and lose it, your body works really hard to get you back to that weight since it's assumed you're going through a famine period. On top of that, I was unaware that pure calorie counting causes your body to scavenge your muscles first before it attacks your fat, so I would fluctuate between losing weight, looking good, and bloating back up and making it harder to lose weight the next time. I tried Atkins, paleo, 6 small meals. Didn't matter because the exercise is needed, but sadly I lived in Indianapolis, which discourages biking and walking. We finally got some protected trails and lanes in, and we moved closer to work. It took a year to work up the courage, but the great thing about biking is, unlike other exercises, I can't give up if I feel like it, because it's my only way to work or home, and it's only 5 minutes more to get to work thanks to traffic. I rebuilt my muscles and lost 15 pounds of fat over the year, but it required a change in the way the rules are set up before I could succeed in cycling. I probably could have succeeded without the changes, but it would have been a lot more dangerous, and I would have had to take a lot more risks, just like how many women and minorities can be very successful, but the structure is set up to throw constant blocks in their path. The fact that they succeed means you should be even more impressed with them, and not say, well, why did white men do all the great stuff while there were so few women and minorities doing that? They were too busy trying to cut through the BS the system threw at them, that's why. It's like asking why so many cyclists are in the hospital when a road is set up for drivers. It's obviously their fault, the lazy bastards. I was able to switch perspectives from thin to fat, car to cyclist. It is biologically impossible to switch to female and minority, but I have the ability to contemplate it and listen to the data. I don't deny the evidence because anthropologists, sociologists, and psychologists aren't real scientists, just like traffic researchers obviously aren't real scientists. They don't mix chemicals in a lab or look under a microscope, and that's the only thing a scientist can be. Drivers are not to blame for the difficulties of this, just like white males are not to blame. However, drivers and white males have to be aware of the struggles people who are not them have to go through and not ignore it, and really listen to it. The system is lopsided and broken and needs fixing. That will help everyone in the long run. And sometimes that involves not getting as much right away as you used to have and being okay with that. And not feeling persecuted like some drivers do when some of their street gets turned into bike lanes. Even though more cyclists can fit on that strip than cars, reducing the number of drivers on the road. In the long run, though, it may be much better for everyone. I'm white, straight, male, hardworking, car driving, lower middle class, and proud of what I have accomplished. However, the only way I can remain proud is if I'm aware of the system and inequality that exists and work hard to correct it. But seriously, don't say check your privilege to shut people up.